So today we're going to be taking a look at A Pocket Guide to the Empire and its Environs, which came as part of the collector's edition for The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I mentioned this book when I did the review for The Emperor's Guide to Tamriel, and if you're familiar with that book or any of the other Elder Scrolls related books I've done reviews for, like the Skyrim Library, Tales of Tamriel, this one might seem quite unimpressive, both visually and physically, and in terms of the content as well. It's very small. It's about the size of a mass market paperback and about just over 100 pages, but you shouldn't let that fool you into thinking it's not a good book, because it is. The text is really, really good. Basically, it's a straight up lore book. It discusses each of the provinces of Tamriel and talking about each of their different peoples and history, and it's all a very, very brief overview. There's no depth here. The text is very dry and very concise. It's really like a Cliff's Notes version of the lore, and I actually think that's really good. For example, maybe a day or two before The Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, if I want to sort of brush up on my lore to prepare for that, this would be the book I would go to before any other. It's very clear, concise, and structured, which is not necessarily something I can say for the Skyrim Library or Tales of Tamriel or the improved Emperor's Guide to Tamriel, because those were a bit more by necessity, a bit more all over the place, and perhaps more focused on creating an entertaining experience than an informative one. And so this book fulfills that need for clarity and structure very well, despite being quite brief. As for the artwork throughout, there's not a whole lot, and what is there is terrible. In fact, if you've read the Skyrim Library, you will have seen a lot of this art in full color, no less. Also, while this book isn't as physically impressive as a lot of the other Elder Scrolls related books, it still adheres to, and in fact really began, one of my favorite things about all the books they've done for the Elder Scrolls, which is really that they're trying to do as much as they can to make an immersive experience by making the books feel like a part of the world. Now this one is very much a sort of budget, cheaper version of that idea, but it's still doing its best to give you that impression, whether that's just the feel or look of the cover, or the sort of staining on the pages that, as soon as you take it out of the box, already gives it a sort of old feel to it. Although one thing I would have liked to have seen that would have really added to that experience and also helped the text from being a little too dry is having something like handwritten notes in the margins or something, things crossed out, comments made. The idea being that this book would have belonged to someone else in Tamriel before you had it. I think that would have given the book a lot of character. But still, the book is so much more impressive than 99% of other books you get as part of collector's edition for games. And the fact that it was part of the collector's edition kind of sucks, because it does mean it's a lot harder for you to get your hands on, and establishing a reasonable price can be difficult. But if you're someone who's only played the later Elder Scrolls games and is interested in trying Oblivion, then I actually would recommend the collector's edition for Oblivion, because if you can find it for a reasonable price, because the good thing about it is it doesn't come as part of like a huge big box with a statue and tons of other crap that you don't need. But if you already have Oblivion and you're just interested in getting your hands on this book, I recommend doing what I did, which is just keep your eyes peeled for someone selling it separately for, maybe around $20 US. I mean, the book certainly is not a must-have. Most of the information, if you've read some of the other books, played the games a lot, you will already know basically all of the information in here. It is a good, informative refresher to that information, and I know for me, having this book is just quite a fun little addition to your Elder Scrolls library.